Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Pinnacle Financial Partners, an equal housing lender committed to helping Nashvillians in changing neighborhoods stay in their homes with specialized home equity lending. Learn more at pnfp.com/home.
I'm Khalil Ecolona, and this is Nashville. It is the one-year anniversary of the Black Opry, created to provide a home for Black artists and Black fans of country, blues, folk, and Americana music. The website has also grown into a community. Now, the Black Opry even has a touring musical showcase called the Black Opry Revue, which is performing tonight at City Winery. I'm pleased to introduce my first guest, Holly G., the founder of the Black Opry. Holly, welcome to This is Nashville.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so fun to be able to celebrate in so many different ways, and this is definitely one of the highlights, so I'm excited to be here.
Well, we're so excited to have you. Joining Holly is Derek Campbell, one half of the country music duo, the Kentucky Gentleman, set to perform tonight at the Black Opry Revue, along with his twin brother, Brandon. Derek, thanks for being here.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
So, Holly, let me start with you. Tell me why you created the Black Opry.
So I'm just a huge country music fan. I love all kinds of music, but country music is what I really, really connected with ever since I was a very small child. And for as long as I have had that connection with it, I've never been able to see myself in it in any capacity. You don't see yourself in the videos or on the stages or even in the crowds, in the audience, at the shows. And so, you know, for a long time, I just kind of accepted, like, that's just the way that it is. If you love it, you got to love it from the outside. And then summer of 2020, after George Floyd got murdered and the whole country was in this, like, unrest, I was thinking of the different things that I consume and how they contribute to the larger culture. And country music is, like, the biggest thing that I consume. I'm always listening to country music. If I'm washing dishes in the shower, it doesn't matter. That's what I'm doing. And so I realized, I was like, I can't keep consuming it this way because it's contributing to, you know, a harmful culture. And so I started exploring and trying to find platforms or things that supported marginalized country artists, if there were any. I didn't even know if there were any, and I couldn't really find very much. The only thing I did find, luckily, was Reese Palmer, who was just about to launch Color Me Country Radio on Apple Music. And she exposed me to so many different artists, and it was like a whole nother world opened up. I did not know country music could look like that. And one thing that Reese would say a lot is, like, if I'm doing this and we have this one platform, there need to be 5 more of us that are doing it and creating other platforms as well. And so I just kind of answered that call, and that's how Black Opry was started.
So when you created this platform, what were your expectations 1 year ago?
I literally I say this all the time, and I think people think I'm joking, but I just wanted, like, 5 people to talk to about country music because I had been yelling into a void on the internet for so long. Like, the people in my circle don't know or listen to country music. So, you know, I'm watching the CMT Awards and tweeting about it and, you know, talking about who has a new song out and, like, getting nothing back from those conversations because I couldn't find, like, my people that would want to interact with me about that. And so that was what I needed from it. It was really a way for me to heal my own relationship with country music. And I was just hoping to find more people that looked like me that wanted to have conversations just about good music and the stuff that I liked. And I have been, like, I'm still very overwhelmed and surprised at what it ended up being. I try really hard not to project onto it what I want it to be and let it grow into what it needs to be for all of us. And so giving the space, the freedom to evolve naturally has just let it become something really beautiful.
Derek, when you heard of the Black Opry, what was your initial reaction?
Honestly, before that, Holly always reached out just as a fan of our music, and we were always really appreciative of someone that was willing to tell us, hey, you know, I love what you're doing, and that isn't something that as a Black artist we were getting so much. But then she was like, after some conversation, she's like, so I'm starting something. I've got this idea. If y'all want to be a part of it, like, feel free. We open arms, and like there was no convincing that needed to be had at all. We it was pretty overwhelming to figure out that, like, she was really doing it and doing it in a grand way, without even realizing what she was doing for us.
Did you face roadblocks in your career as, you know, Black men performing country music?
Yes, 100%. Actually, I've spoken before about how our very first meeting with an executive they told us that told us about Mickey Guyton, that she had this deal and they don't know what to do with her, and that we were going to end up just like her. They're not going to know what to do with us, that we weren't marketable. And I think today's progress shows exactly how marketable we are and how talented as artists we all are.
As you were going through experiences like that, had you and your brother been looking for something like the Black Opry to find community in?
Honestly, it was hard to imagine because had never been done before. So I wouldn't say we were looking for it. It was something we needed, but we didn't know that it was possible.
So Holly, I'm interested in the process of getting the word out about the Black Opry. Did you find that people were really open and excited to become involved?
I was not expecting people to be open and excited, just because when you are a Black person that operates in country music in any capacity, whether it's a fan, an artist, whatever, you're always told you're the only one. Like, you're a unicorn. There are not other people like you. And so I was expecting nothing. I was hoping maybe we could find a couple more artists or fans like the Kentucky Gentleman, but to see the way that everybody responded to it, and it's people from all backgrounds. I've had so many white people reach out to me and say, this is something that I wanted, because now I can feel good about consuming country music and knowing that I'm not contributing to a culture that's toxic. And so it's just been really fascinating to me to see how much positive response we've got. Don't get me wrong, I do get hate mail, and there's a lot of negative feedback that I do get, but the positive has so far outweighed the negative. I think in country music and in Nashville, there's a bubble, and people within that forget that there's such a huge world outside of it. Mm-hmm. And that's why we don't center everything that we do in Nashville, because the country music fans are out there. They're outside of this little part of the world or the country or whatever, and they're everywhere, and they're so ready and excited for something that's more inclusive.
Now, you've created this community for people to be a part of. Derek, how does it feel to be in this community with people who have had, very similar experiences to yours?
Honestly, to be frank about it, the uniqueness of each individual artist, in the country world, a lot of times it's celebrated to be similar to one another. To be in this Black Opry family where we all embrace each other's individualities and all of our backgrounds, all of our styles, we all sing from different places, and we're coming from different places. It's something that we don't take for granted at all. It feels incredible. It's a family reunion every time we reunite. It is nothing. I don't know. It feels like this. It's just something to be super, super grateful for. And
I actually met their mom. We did a show in Kentucky, and I don't know why, but I just took to them really well, and I'm just like, those are my babies. And so when I met their mom, I'm like, I'm not stepping on your toes, but these are my children too. I just love them so much. And she gave me the biggest hug, and she thanked me, and she said, nobody takes care of them the way that you do, so thank you for that. And of course I went back to green room and sobbed for 20 minutes. But it feels good to be able to do that for people.
You mentioned something, Derek. You talked about the individual nature of where everybody comes from in performing this. And, we look at a lot of popular music, particularly music where African Americans are at the forefront, hip hop, so to speak. And a lot of it sounds exactly the same, but yet there's this individual nature where country music artists can come with their own artistry and not be judged for it. You're actually honored and praised for it. Talk to me about that.
It's I guess just like other fellow Black Opry, Roberta Lee talks about in her song Ghetto Country Streets, just talking about our different perspectives and no one to look and invalidate that and say that that's wrong. She talks about how, in other country music, they're trailer parks and this and that. And she's like, we had projects get in what we call the ghetto, and certain expectations and certain words that we use. And it's just to have those different kind of perspectives where all of us can relate and all of us have seen those things. And other people have in their heads, this is what's country and this isn't what's country. And we're all looking at each other in the room we were all country is all get out. And it is something that, you go so long, someone telling you that that's not country, or that you should go sing this instead. It's when you're in a room with all these people who just are telling their stories, speaking their minds in ways that inspire you every time that someone opens their mouth. It teaches you to be even more embracing of other people.
What can we expect from tonight's performance?
Oh, we're gonna all about the fun. If you haven't seen us perform yet, all we want to do is dance and sing, and so it's gonna be complete good vibes, quote unquote. It's gonna be great vibes, and we're just gonna have a great time.
So, Holly, tell me, what's your hope for the future of the Black Opry?
My hope is that we can create something outside of the traditional structures of country music that sustains itself past when this trend dies down. I think a lot of people are excited about what we're doing right now because it's trendy, but white people very quickly get exhausted talking about racism and dealing with the dynamics of that within whatever spaces they operate in. So I think that it's really important for us to build something that's sustainable without the support of the mainstream country industry. And that's what gets me so excited about the tour, because we don't rely on anybody else for that. We have a booking agent. Everything is booked under our brand, and we're able to bring new artists to the table and give these opportunities away. We have over 50 shows throughout the rest of the year, and we have shows booked all the way out until spring of 2023. And so I'm hoping that this continues to keep that momentum up so it can be something that, artists can, I got a gap in my schedule. Let me go play some shows with the Black Opry Revue to keep me working.
Yeah.
I really want us to have our own things.
Derek, where would you like to see the Black Opry go from here?
My goodness. I think big no matter what. I honestly, I see our venues getting bigger. I see even more, like, our family expanding so much. I see all of us going on tour with not only each other, but other artists who are embracing what the Black Opry is doing. I see us taking over.
I hope so.
That is Derek Campbell, who performs in the Kentucky Gentleman with his twin brother, Brandon. They're hitting the stage at the Black Opry Revue tonight at City Winery. Derek, thanks for being here, and break a leg tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We're going to go out on one of their songs. Here's Whatever You're Up For by the Kentucky Gentleman.
Yeah, you love to keep me guessing, and you know that's fine with me. You know you get my heart be racing. You're that turn me up gasoline. Long as I'm with you, whatever you choose, it don't matter what we do. Babe, tell me what it's gonna be. I'm down for whatever you're up for. Staying in, sipping wine on the front porch. We're downtown, we can burn up the dance floor. Hit the black top, don't stop till it's just us around. Hang back, slip your blue jeans off. I put the bottle on ice in my truck bed toolbox. I'm all in, yeah, whatever you're up for. I'm down.
I am up for this show. It's going to be fun. We have to take a short break. When we come back, we're looking back at the history of people of color in country music. We'll talk with the former leader of the Black Country Music Association, which blazed its own path in the 90s. Tweet us your thoughts about diversity in country music at This Is Nashville. We'll be right back.
Staying in, sipping wine on the front porch. Or downtown, we can burn up the dance floor. The black top don't stop till it's just us around. Hang back, slip your blue jeans off. Put the bottle on ice in my truck bed toolbox. I'm all in, yeah, whatever you're up for. I'm
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Khalil Colonna, and this is Nashville. If you look at country music videos or listen to top country music stations, you will probably not see a very diverse representation in the genre. But that doesn't mean that other voices aren't making songs and performing. My next guest has been working to highlight diverse voices in the community and in country music for decades. Frankie Staton is a singer-songwriter who led the Black Country Music Association back in the 1990s. Frankie, welcome to This Is Nashville.
Well, thank you for having me.
Such an honor to have you with us. Now, you've been in the game for quite some time. Tell me, what was it like for you as you tried to make your way into the country music industry?
It was absolutely awful to be a creative person that heard music running through my head 24 hours a day and trying to discern if my music was as commercial or as good as what I heard on the radio. And I do believe it was. I spent many years in the Bluebird Cafe listening to the best songwriters in this city. But when I would want to pitch my songs, you could feel the atmosphere in the room change. And then I would go through this whole litany of questions. Why do you want to do this? This is not about you. Has nothing to do with you people. And one day I said, I'm getting ready to go research my history and find out. And what I found out floored me. And I knew that not only I, but many other Black people had a right to be here. And I responded to a story in the New York News and Record that said, why don't you have more diversity in country music? Music Row said they don't like it, they can't sing it, it's not about them, we've looked for them, we can't find them. And so I said, okay, you're telling me one thing and the public something else, and I'm gonna challenge the story. And so I had the first Black country music showcase at the Bluebird Cafe in 1997.
Take me back to Nashville during that time, like when the Black Country Music Association was formed. What was this city going through?
Everyone was so frustrated because we were just constantly rejected and looked at as though we were like nuts. Like, why would you want to sing this music? And I finally said, to somebody once, I said, why don't you tell God to only give me rhythm and blues songs, if that's the situation? I can't say, well, I can only write this type of music. I can't help it if that's what I'm writing. And I just will never forget just being literally in a publishing appointment and the man telling me to my face, there's no way you could write a song like this. And when I look back at it, I know my gender had as much to do with it as the color of my skin, because women have always been treated bad in country music. A handful would make it and the rest would just be treated like trash. And then me being a diverse woman made it even worse. So it was very, very hard. It was very hard.
Sounds like there was intentionally a wall set up to prevent you from even getting close. And tell me, did you turn to icons of other musical genres for help and assistance? If you did, what was their reaction?
I went to Russell Simmons. I got to Russell Simmons, to Robert Johnson, who owned BET. We got an artist on LA Live out of Los Angeles on BET. And Russell, I actually talked to Russell twice, and Russell said, Frankie, I don't know anything about country music. And I said, well, Russell, nobody knew anything about hip hop till you founded it. I actually went to the Hip Hop Summit, which was at Opryland Hotel, and stood up and said, can a hip hop radio walk urban country through your back door so we can get some airplay? They were like, who is that woman? So yeah, I really exhausted every possibility. But for me to talk to label heads here, they just completely ignored me.
Now, okay, so you talked to Russell Simmons, who was a co-owner of Def Jam Records, a very popular seminal hip-hop label in the 80s, and helped the genre really explode. How do you feel now about seeing artists like Lil Nas X, who has very much a country and hip-hop within his music?
Well, I always knew that would happen. I said, if we come into country music, it's going to be so many subcultures created that's going to be shocking. I already knew it. I saw it. It would be every kind of branding you could think of. And I went after that. I went after that and just could not get it. But as usual, today the women are leading the way. And to see the president of the Country Music Association, to see Fram Leslie from CMT. So many people, Leslie Fram from CMT, work with Holly. That's a wonderful thing. It's a beautiful thing to happen. It's just that I was ahead of my time.
You know, many of us don't know the many contributions that African Americans have made to country music. And you alluded to this earlier. As you grew in the industry, after you had these experiences and you said to yourself, okay, I'm going to do my research and learn the history, and your knowledge expanded. What did you learn?
Oh my God. Oh my, I am haunted by a man out of Kentucky named Arnold Schultz, who is one of the greatest guitarists that ever lived, was never recorded, but was just shockingly the best they had ever seen. And his thumb picking style was passed on down to Merle Travis, who passed it to Chet Atkins, who passed it to millions of people. Not only did he play guitar, he was a fiddle virtuoso as well. And then down in Montgomery, Alabama, Rufus T. Todd Payne was a street musician who was like a one-man band, a multi-instrumentalist, and the children would follow him everywhere. And Hank Williams was 8 years old when he started following Rufus, and Hank's mom said, come over to our house, we'll feed you, we'll pay you to teach Hank to play. And little did he know this man was going to be considered the father of country music someday. And before that, Jimmy Rogers played with the Black Railroad Men. He was influenced by them. When Bob Wills created Western Swing, he was trying to emulate Bessie Smith out of Chattanooga. Elvis Presley was following Sister Rosetta Tharpe. I mean, it just goes on and on. Here's Otis Blackwell writing all these #1 hits, and nobody knew anything about it.
Holly,
it's just shocking.
Yeah. Yeah. The things that we discover once we decide to dig deep. Holly G is still with us. Holly, I'm wondering, what are you thinking as you hear Frankie tell us all these stories?
I think that it's always important for me to remind people that I'm not doing anything new, and I love any opportunity where I can lift up Frankie's voice, because Frankie did this work long before I was here to do it. And the only difference between when she did it and when I'm doing it is just that I have different tools. But, I try to make it very clear that, I'm not like the spearhead of this movement. I stand on the shoulders of Frankie and all of these artists, and there's so much rich history there that we have to pull from and build upon. And Frankie is just amazing. I'm so glad that, we are in this space where we can work together and we can have her join us for these things. I admire her so much.
How much did you know about Frankie and Cleve Francis's work in the 1990s?
Well, see, this is the problem. Like that work is not celebrated and talked about. So that's something that I had to dig for to find. And, I found the initial bits and pieces of it through listening to Reese Palmer. Reese is so good about highlighting our history and things like that. So I found out about Frankie and Cleve through Reese, and, just started digging through stuff and looking up what they had done. And it, I'll never forget, we were at a premiere for CMT for their Charlie Pride special, and I saw Frankie and I was like, oh my God, that's Frankie Staton. And I walked up to introduce myself, and she's like, you're Holly G. And I'm like, how do you know who I am? Because it's so cool to be able to exist in space with people that you look up to and can learn from. And I think the biggest lesson that I've taken from Frankie is she taught me, she says, when you meet me, you meet many. And so I try to really just incorporate that and live by that in this work that we're doing, and make sure that anytime, I'm brought to a table, I'm bringing everybody with me.
Frankie, do you remember that moment of meeting Holly?
Oh, absolutely. At the Charlie Pride Giants show. And I was just excited about it. And I had one of the singers from the Black Country Music Association with me, Valerie Ellis, and Holly is like, I know who both of you are. And we were looking at her like she was crazy. Like, really? Like, really?
If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville, and I'm your host, Khalil Ekulona. We're talking about country music with singer-songwriter Frankie Staton and the Black Opry founder, Holly G. I'd like to bring in my next guest to share some historical perspective with us. Amanda Marie Martinez is a doctoral student studying the country music industry from the 1970s to the 90s. She's also worked on the new documentary For Love and Country. Amanda, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here alongside Holly and Frankie, of course.
We're really honored to have you with us. Tell me, how did you get into your line of research?
Sure. Yeah. So Holly was saying, also a huge country music fan, grew up listening to it. And I'm from Northern California, from the San Francisco Bay Area. And I am Mexican American, so I grew up listening to not just Mexican regional music, but also punk rock, because my mom was a punk rocker, but also country music. And my love of country music really kind of grew into an obsession by the time I was in college. So as an undergrad at UC Berkeley, I started to, when I had to do history kind of research papers, I started to, gravitate towards writing about country music because I loved it. And as I did that, I grew kind of frustrated with the kind of singular narrative that existed in that scholarship, right? Which was, the story that country music started as the music of white rural Southerners. And, when they moved to urban centers in the years surrounding World War II, they took their music with them and then proceeded to pass the music on to, their descendants. And that's, the way that we understand the kind of huge growth of country music over the last century or so. And that was certainly, not a narrative that I saw myself in. And, as I eventually started, grad school and research for my dissertation, it became very clear, right, that Black and Brown artists and fans have always been here, right? And, country music is absolutely built on especially Blackness, right? And also, this Brown presence has always been there as well. So, it was, crazy, especially the 1970s, coming across all these ads, especially for Black women in country music, right? That were trying to make it as Black country artists. So again, they've always been here, right? So for me, there was this big disconnect, like Frankie was talking about, is like, why and how has this narrative persisted when it's never been the reality?
Holly, when you hear Amanda talk about the history of this industry, what comes to mind?
It's disappointing because the more that I learn and hear, it just makes me think about what could have been. Like, if we were given the proper respect and honor within this industry that, our ancestors earned, I think about how different my relationship to country music would have been. And I think about, how different, Frankie's career should have been. And I think about, how we could have consumed this differently and the way it just, like, I think about not having to do this work. Right, I would have been able to enjoy this music without having it be a burden, and so there's a heaviness there and a sadness, but there's also like some underlying hope there because we are having these conversations now. We do have people like Amanda that are so dedicated and committed to getting the word out there about this forgotten history.
Frankie, it looks like the industry has had opportunities to truly diversify, but it resisted time and time again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know that Valerie was taken to Warner Brothers by Randy Travis, his manager, and they gave her a developmental deal, worked with her a little while, and then decided we don't know what to do with a Black woman. We had a band from Lynette, Alabama, all Black country band. I mean, I could align them with groups like Diamond Rio and Shenandoah, and Wheels was the name of the band. I've never seen anything like it. They took to the stage at one of our showcases, and I literally thought I was in some major arena looking at a group of seasoned musicians, singers, traveled all over the country, even in Europe, and had a developmental deal on Asylum Records, subsequently were dropped. So there were many people that were just passed over, ignored, not given a chance to tour. And they would always tell us, well, we have Charlie Pride, so we're not a racist industry. And Cleve Francis said, and I will quote Cleve again, they shook the country music tree, 30-some million Black people, and one brother fell out in 75 years.
Let me ask you, how do our misconceptions about country music negatively impact us?
Well, they negatively impact us because being that there's not a presence of diversity there, people look at us like we're crazy, like, well, why do you want to do this? You're looked at like you're crazy. But now when you see the Black Opry, that's a whole different ballgame, because you understand, it's not 1, 2, 3, 4, but there's 6 singers up here on stage. I had as many as 18 on stage at one time. So it negatively affects specifically like somebody in the audience, like, I don't know why they're doing that. So the more they see us, the more they'll show up and support us. The more here's my quote, country music is off to a great start. But when all of the people in America, when all of the different diverse people get to tell their country story and sing their song, then it will come to be all that it should be.
Frankie, we're about to play a song of yours called Leading Lady, which I understand has some lines written by Mac Vickery. Can you tell me a little about him?
Well, I just heard that song in my head. I really wanted Tammy Wynette to sing it. And I met Mac. I used to sing on the Ralph Emery morning show. And I met Mac and I asked him, I said, would you listen to my music? He said, I will. And he said, if it's no good, I'm going to tell you. And I played him that song. He said, oh, you wrote that? And he kept asking me to play songs. I just kept playing them songs. And he walked me into Sony and tried to get them to sign me that very morning. He said, this girl's got beautiful music. And of course, they refused. And he was a broken man. And he said, look, I know you're a star. I was down in Muscle Shoals a couple of years ago. And I walked into the Alabama Songwriters Hall of Fame. I was with some friends of mine from England. And the first gold record I saw was Mac's. And I just put my hand up against that glass and started crying. And they said, why are you crying, Frankie? And I said, because this man fought for me. And that's something you never forget.
That is singer-songwriter Frankie Staton. She was joined by Holly G., creator of the Black Opry. Thank you both for joining us. Here is Frankie Staton's Leading Lady.
If my face isn't shown on the silver screen and the world never knows my name, I'm a star that outshines them all. 'Cause sweetheart, you gave me my break, and playing the part of your superstar is worth all the pain and heartache. The star of his show. I may never win.
When we come back, we're going to dive further into the question of diversity in country music as we explore the paths of Latinx and Asian American voices within the genre. Tweet us your thoughts on diversity in country music at This Is Nashville. We'll be right back.
Yes, I'm the leading lady when it comes to loving you.
I'm Khalil A. Colonna, and this is Nashville. Earlier in the show, we talked about the lack of black voices in the country music industry, but it's a general lack of diversity within country music. There are many Native American, Latinx, and Asian American musicians vying to become recognized for music they love performing. My next guest is Ben Park, a musician and founder of the Shoes Off Collective, showcasing Asian American and Pacific Islander songwriters, including previous This Is Nashville guest, Gabe Lee. Ben, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here, my friend.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. I was listening in during that entire session. It's a real honor just listening to Holly and Frankie and you, and it's a privilege being here. Thank you.
Oh, we're really happy to have you with us. So talk to me. Tell me about your journey in the music industry.
So I moved to Nashville a few years ago. I think starting in middle school, I started playing drums, guitar, started writing songs. In high school, I started busking. I got my first gig playing in a coffee shop. And then like after graduated high school, I started playing all over my home area of Michiana, which is like the border. It's like the Michigan and Indiana area, that sort of state border. So I learned quite a bit about the live music industry before I moved to Nashville. And then I learned even more after I moved to Nashville. But yeah, so I've been writing songs and performing for a while. It's but it's always been that, as explained in much further more eloquent detail of the previous guests, that yes, there is a lack of diversity. There is an untapped market of people in the music industry.
Talk to me a little bit about that. Like when you got here, what were you seeing as you attended songwriting workshops and shows? And like, how did that affect your attitude about country music?
Ironically, I didn't really fall in love with country music until after I moved to Nashville, which is not really everybody's story. Like, you know, most people love country music before they moved to Nashville, but like I fell in love with the genre. I like any genre that really brings that sense of community, which in this case is country music as well as various other genres. But yeah, before and after I moved to Nashville, I've always been like the only or one of the couple Asian Americans in a music venue or at a writer's round, et cetera, et cetera. And personally for me, like I don't use my race as a gimmick. I don't really like use my race as like part of a brand, but at the same time I realize that I need to represent my ethnicity, my race, my heritage, my culture, because there is such a lack of that. And
is that what motivated you to create Shoes Off?
Yeah, absolutely. Ironically, I started this back in January. It started as a bunch of messages I sent on Instagram to a bunch of Asian artists I already knew or were aware of. The support with the yeses I got from that were so overwhelming to the point where instead of just making it like a small writers round series, I decided to establish it as my own agency. It's not like an official LLC or anything like that. I hope to make it that in the future. But yeah, I'm booking a tour for somebody. I'm starting various shows at various venues. And it's all, the word I'm driven by with Shoes Off is equity, as opposed, like equality is not bad, but equity is really what gets people's foot in the door.
Amanda Marie Martinez is still with us. Amanda, you gave a talk to the Center for Popular Music titled Tequila, Margaritas, and Mexican Beaches. Country music loves Latino culture, so why doesn't include more Latinos? You know, talk to me about how country music uses Latino imagery to promote its image.
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, there's a deep history of this. I mean, going back to, Western swing, that was absolutely built on Latinx, strictly Mexican American sounds and images. And, you think about a career defining song like El Paso by Marty Robbins, up until the present, where, especially, one of the key images in country music today is the beach cowboy. And so often, that beach cowboy is on a Latin American beach, right? Where he's got his Latina with him and, drinking his margarita or his tequila or etc. Right. So, it's clear that country music today is absolutely building on a love for Mexican culture or Latinx culture more broadly. But what is really striking about this historically is that there have been, virtually no commercially successful Latinx artists historically. They have existed, right, including superstars like a Freddie Fender or Johnny Rodriguez. But on the whole, the statistics are really, really striking. There's, of course, the scholar Jada Watson, who works on data regarding the country music charts, right? And her research has shown that since 1944, I believe, just 0.5% of the songs on the country music charts have been recorded by Latinx artists. And of course, this also gets to the gendered issue that Frankie brought up, because almost all of these songs were recorded by men, and just a few men, including not just Freddie Fender, Johnny Rodriguez, but also someone like Rick Trevino, who had a number of huge hits in the 90s. So, it tracks with a broader trend of country music borrowing from Black culture, from Latinx culture, indigenous culture, and not supporting those individuals themselves.
I want to play a little bit of a song by Cat Luna and Alex Garrido. It's called Yo Quiero Amarte.
No temas, quiero ayudarte. Yo quiero amarte. Enséñame, solo quiero amarte. No hay nadie que me ama como tú. Tu sonrisa, no, yo no quiero olvidar. En la oscuridad.
Amanda, tell us about what Kat and Alex are trying to do in country right now.
Yeah, I mean, Kat and Alex are, an excellent duo, being Cuban and Puerto Rican, a contemporary artist. And, it's incredible what they do, right? Where they sing songs and, country songs in Spanish, right? And they kind of gain traction by doing that, through social media. And now they are, recording those songs, their own songs in both English and Spanish. And I absolutely hope that it catches on. There's always been those listeners, that demographic there. But, we'll have to wait and see, right? This is not the first time this has been tried before. I just mentioned Rick Trevino in the 90s, and he is someone who also recorded his songs in both English and Spanish. And that is not something, unfortunately, that caught on after that. So I'm hopeful this time is different, but, it's also striking to me, also just thinking about, listening to Holly and Frankie talk, where, the industry has felt this pressure before, right? And things haven't changed. So I'm just hopeful in this instance that things do change for the good.
If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville, and I'm your host, Khalil Ekalona. My guests are Ben Park and Amanda Marie Martinez. We're talking this hour about the growing push to bring more diversity into the country music industry. We were talking earlier about representation and the idea of equal opportunity versus equity. Ben, you mentioned that. I want you to go into that a little bit deeper on your thoughts.
So do you want me to elaborate the difference between the two, or for
Yeah.
our listeners?
What's more important to you?
I believe equity is more important than equality. Like, I want to incorporate both, but I believe equity is more important than equality just because of that issue of representation and that untapped market of artists who want to play the same genres that predominantly white people dominate. But there might be a stigma that like not enough Asian people or there are not enough Black country artists, and then like the ones that are successful are more or less tokenized, or like they're not I don't think they're intentionally tokenized, but they're still tokenized in execution, like Jimmy Allen or Breland. But that's exactly why I lean towards equity as opposed to equality, because it's not just the non-white artists versus the overwhelming white artists, but it's also the equity I want to bring to communities within the AAPI community. And for those who don't know that acronym, that stands for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. And especially after the Atlanta shootings last year, everything that has been dwelling in the very back of my mind about the way that Asian women are treated in America, things that I've realized how people perceive me that have just been dwelling in the back burner of my mind. Ever since Atlanta, all that really came to the forefront. And I believe it shouldn't have taken the deaths of people, human beings, to really get me to get on my 2 feet, not sit on my hands and start shoes off. But the point I'm trying to get at is that I could easily like book predominantly like pale-skinned East Asian men, but I recognize that within the AAPI community, like Southeast Asians and like Pacific Islanders have faced their own form of discrimination like outside of America. And it's that colorism that is especially dominant. I grew up, I'm Korean American. Like I was born in Chicago, grew up in Michigan, moved to Nashville. Like I am definitely not a brown Asian by any means. And I have to also recognize my own privilege as well in this very color system, whether it be in America or somewhere else in the world. So it's not just equity in terms of like bringing more non-white artists to more mainstream stages, but also more Southeast Asians, more Pacific Islanders. Like I actively try to hunt out for Pacific Islander artists as well. Mm-hmm. Just because if I went the easy route, quote unquote, I would end up booking a bunch of like light-skinned East Asian artists, and that's something I'm trying to really avoid. So that's why I'm trying to make equity consistent.
You know, Amanda, I want to end with you. You know, what do you want people listening to us today to walk away with?
Yeah, well, you know, oftentimes people kind of ask me, you know, why I'm attacking country music. And I absolutely don't see it that way, right? Because I'm coming to this from a place of love, right? This is something I really love. And I think, you know, touching on, you know, what Holly was talking about earlier, which to me is the real paradox of country music, that it has this ability to be this such an inclusive, beautiful space, right? You know, also thinking about the work that Ben is doing as well. And of course, Frankie was doing before all of us, you know, that it represents this paradox that it has always had this very, very broad appeal along, you know, not just racial lines, but also class, region, age. Age is a big one for popular music, right? Where most types of music are maybe associated with youth culture, but country music has always had listeners across all of these spheres, right? So it has such this beautiful, inclusive potential, even though it has been marketed in such an exclusionary way. So I think that that is what, I hope people take from this, right? About the kind of radical potential of country music.
That's country music historian Amanda Marie Martinez. She was joined by musician Ben Park. Thank you both for being with us today. It's been a pretty musical hour, so we're going to go out today with a song by Daniel Kim Etheridge. He's a Korean-American artist. He wrote Tired of Rising Above, in part as a reaction to the shootings in Atlanta in which 6 women of Asian descent were killed. Let's listen.
I shouldn't have to justify my roots or tell you why my blood runs Dodger blue. Well, I don't have to prove that I know more paw muscle more than you. The truth is I don't owe a thing to you. If everything was equal, like they say inside the steeple, I wouldn't have to fight twice as hard for half as much. If playing fields were level, I wouldn't do deals with the devil. I wouldn't have to.
We want to thank everyone who tuned in this hour. Tomorrow, we're remembering the life and legacy of Talu Skylar Quinn. This is Nashville is a production of WPLN News and Nashville Public Radio. You can listen back at thisisnashville.org or wherever you get your podcasts. Our producers are Steve Harouche, Rose Gilbert, Tasha A.F. Lemley. Our digital lead is Anna Gallegos Cannon. Michaela Elias is our technical director. Our executive producer is Andrea Tudhope. Special thanks to Julie Height and our sister station 91.1 WNXP.
So that they don't have to struggle. Yeah, my mother works as hard as anyone. They beg for prayers, goddamn, they play the part. They make fun of how she says how great thou art. Well, there's no amount of grace for what they don't say to her face. It's undeserved, but she still prays for their hearts. If everything was equal, like they say inside that steeple, I wouldn't have to fight twice as hard for half as much. If playing fields were level, I wouldn't do deals with the devil. I wouldn't have to turn my cheek and die at death by 1,000 cuts, running out of rope enough's enough. But I'm getting tired of rising above. One day I'll have kids that look like me, and they won't look how they sound when they sing. One day I'll have kids that look like me. I hope they'll see that eyes like ours don't make us who we are. If everything was equal, like they say inside that steeple, I wouldn't have to fight twice as hard for half as much. If playing fields were level, I wouldn't do deals with the devil. I wouldn't have to turn my cheek and die at death by 1,000